Hello, what's up everybody? It's your boy Real_Joshua coming to you with another one of these how to get into One Piece trading card videos. This is part 2 of a 2-part series where I teach you how to get into the One Piece trading card game. If you missed the first part, I will link it in the description, so I highly suggest you go check that out. But in that video, I covered why you should play One Piece card game, key things that you should know, how to actually go about learning how to play that game, how much it costs, planning your first deck, and resources. So if you missed that, you should go check that out because all the basics are there. This time we're going to talk about building your first deck, but most of this video is going to be dedicated to actually playing in person. This is more so for people who have not played physical card games, maybe don't know the etiquette and rules behind One Piece playing in person, and then also just getting used to physical card gaming and the etiquette that surrounds it. That stuff was a big kind of barrier to entry and kind of scary for me when I started, but I think once we go over the basics here, it's gonna break down a lot of the confusion that you might see as you go into your in-store events. So yeah, let's get right into it. Okay, so first off, let's talk about building your deck. The first thing that I like to do is take a look at the meta based on what I've seen online. In the first video, I go over how to find the meta decks, but I'll typically look at a site like Eggman Events, which shows you the kind of what's been happening in the meta recently. You could check out the latest events. It shows you who topped, what the kind of stats are. There's also OnePieceTopDecks.com, which shows you the meta for the sets. So this will show you the meta for the upcoming metas as well. So what's currently happening in Japan, if you want to look at EB01 and OP07 expansions, you can check out what's topping over in the East. So let's say I see that ST10 Law is doing really well, and I want to build a Law deck. Actually, maybe I don't want to build a Law deck because that's topping everywhere, and I think I'm going to see it a lot in my locals, and I want to build something that's different from that. I want to build something that maybe counters that or does pretty well against that. I might go for something like a little bit more aggressive. I might try to go something a little bit more control heavy. Maybe let's decide I want to build Enel, which is maybe a good example because it's a kind of notoriously expensive deck to build, although a lot of the decks are pretty expensive nowadays. So I would pull up a deck list and say, okay, I like this deck list. I'm going to take all these cards. By the way, these are the card counts that it shows below. So this means that this deck runs 4x of the Charlotte Katakuri card from OP03, which right now is going for like, I want to say $50 or $60, which is actually down from what it was before. I think it has gotten all the way up to 70 or something like at some point. So yeah, you'll take a look at these. You'll say, okay, these are the cards that I want if I am to build this deck. Now, keep in mind, there are a lot of different deck lists out there, but what I like to do is kind of take inventory of the cards that I might want if I'm building a deck. This is for the very first deck that I was trying to build, Reiju. I saw that. So the way that I kind of planned it was I saw that Reiju was an inexpensive deck to build, and it was a good way for me to kind of get started into the game. Now, this deck was a lot harder than I expected it to be to pilot. A lot of people will go against that, but I think you need to know your matchups really well if you want to play this deck. And as a beginner, I didn't know what all the other decks did, which was really hard to go into the game with a game plan and know what to look for and what my outs were. So it made this deck kind of difficult for me to pilot. That being said, it wasn't very expensive, came out to around $145, probably a little bit less, which for this game, pretty cheap building a complete deck. I knew that coming up, RP Law was going to be in the meta, and that the cards Vinsmoke Reiju, which at the time was $18, it's since gone down to around $12. That card, Reiju, and then Queen would be included in RP Law. So I was doing a bit of future planning. Essentially, the most expensive cards in this deck, by purchasing them, I was also preparing for future meta. So that's kind of a good way to do it. Everyone's journey into this game is going to be different. The entry price is a lot different now than what it was even when I started about a month and a half ago. So yeah. Take a look at what you want, maybe try to build a cheaper deck. I went over that in the previous video, but try to kind of keep in mind what you might want for the future. There are some cards that are kind of staples. And most importantly, I would say pilot your deck that you want to build in the sim. Learn how to use it, know what you're doing, because if you're like me, you will realize that a deck is maybe too hard for you, or maybe it's not your play style, and you will have spent, upwards of 150 bucks on a deck that you don't even really like playing that much or really know what you're doing with. So that being said, I like to lay out a deck build. I like to lay out a deck build spreadsheet like this. I have the card name done. I can put this up as a resource in the comments or the details as well for the video. I will do that, the description. But yeah, I put down like how many copies I have, how much it currently costs at the time of building, the code, so that if I'm going to a local card shop, I can just show them this list or just give them the codes outright so that they know what to look for as they're looking in bulk. And then when it comes to what you're actually buying, right? The most expensive cards, I would suggest not buying those from your local game store because they're trying to make as much profit as they can. This is their whole business, is selling these cards and flipping a profit. And since they're able to move product very quickly, because a lot of people come in and out of those stores, they mark up these products pretty highly because you're not paying for shipping. You don't have to deal with any of the inconveniences that you would have to deal with via other methods of buying cards. So if there's that convenience factor, so I would consider buying bulk cards from one of these vendors, but maybe not. It depends on what you're able to do. But I do know that buying bulk from these vendors, local game stores, it can be a lot easier than like trying to pull these cards from packs yourselves or buying them from someone random online. If you're buying it through, the thing is, TCG Player, let's talk about that site. I covered that in my first video. This is like the market in the US. This is where the market unfolds. And the prices that you'll see here are kind of the baseline good bargain prices of what you should pay, kind of market price for these things. You can pay them and you can buy from a lot of different stores, but if you're buying a lot of bulk, you're gonna have to pay for shipping from typically multiple different vendors, which is going to add a lot of cost to buying in bulk, which is why, and also those things will take a couple weeks to come in. You don't know when you're gonna see your deck. So if there's any urgency, I often think that buying from a local game store for your bulk is gonna be the best way to do that. Now, when it comes to the more expensive cards, let's take Gordon, for example, okay? Gordon is worth like 40 bucks per card right now, $30. It's gone up and down, but it's around 30, 40 bucks for one single copy of this card, Gordon. If it's the more expensive cards, I would opt towards buying those from other collectors. So try to trade where possible or purchase from other verified sellers. The best place to do this, in my experience, is the One Piece trading card game Discord. I would go to the marketplace tab, check out selling. You can see what people are selling. They'll post, what they're selling along with the timestamp kind of in the corner. You can check that. They also will post their a thread in that where you can see if they've been recommended. So they make a reference thread where you can kind of go to these people's thread and see, oh, hey, like this person is selling these cards and they are very good at selling. All these people confirm that they have sold well and they ship out well, etc. So from there, you would go to PayPal, start up a thread with them on Discord, say, hey, I'm looking to buy a playset of Gordons and let's agree on a price. They'll typically sell that at around like 85% of what you would find here on TCG Player. Okay, so you would go here, all filters, verified sellers. So they'll give you like 85% off of the lowest verified sellers. So you can check out here. This person, these are Japanese, by the way, make sure you keep an eye out for that. $38.95 for one card. Then you would pay 85% of that to this person. Now, the benefits are, if you're buying from another collector, A, they're gonna sell it to you for cheaper. B, they will ship it out a lot faster. A lot of times these people, they ship this stuff out within a day. So I would highly recommend going through these people. You get a bit of a discount, it gets to you faster, and it's just the most efficient way to do it. The only thing is they're not as trusted of sellers, but you just want to make sure that when you're dealing with these people, you make sure that they have a seller thread. The other people have already said this person is legit, I like what they're doing. and you can go through these folks, and I haven't had any problems. If you really want to be, also they will sell in a couple different ways. One is PWE, plain white envelope, which they give you an envelope with the cards in it. The cards are like typically in a top loader and just well protected with like cardboard taped on either side so that they don't get warped or anything. Obviously that's a little bit more prone to damage. But again, I haven't had any problems. Or you could do the BM bubble mailer with tracking, where you also get UPS or whatever tracking with your order so that you can track where it is and its status, etc. So that's how I would go about purchasing the more expensive cards in the deck. It's faster, it's often cheaper, and if you buy play sets, if you buy multiple play sets for your deck, they'll give you an even bigger discount. So, and for them, it's more convenient because like they're just trying to get rid of sell their cards and not get ripped off, because if they were selling to the local game stores, they would be making less money than they would be selling directly to you. So it's better for everyone involved. You get more involved with your community, you get to know the people around you, and it's a good way of getting into the game. So yeah, I buy up all the cards that you want, and then you have your first deck. Make sure that you check out the first video. I go over a couple more details of purchasing cards, what you should look for, and how to get the best deals there. But this is the structure that I use. If anybody else has any other tips on how to go about this, let me know. But yeah, that's what you should be expecting kind of at this point. Okay, so now that you've built your first deck, what I would recommend doing is getting involved in your local community and learning what your local card gaming community looks like. So the way that I would go about doing that is you can check out your social media. I like Instagram for this, and you can check out where your local card game stores. Type in Yelp, look for like card game stores and whatnot, and you can see where local card game stores are in your area. And you can follow them on Instagram or whatever, and you can see when and where they are having their card game tournaments. Then you can join their Discords, become part of those communities. I find that local card game stores, their Discords aren't typically very active. So, you're not going to learn too much there, but it does give you the option of reaching out if you have any questions. A lot of the time you can just make a call these people. A lot of the employees at these places aren't the best at dealing with people. I'll say they kind of assume that you know everything about card games, and sometimes they'll treat you as kind of dumb if you don't really know exactly what you're talking about. But whatever, dude, like just ask whatever questions you want to ask. Don't worry about sounding like a beginner. They're not going to give you crap for it, but they're not going to sound too enthusiastic about helping someone out. Another way to find these spots is to download the Bandai app, which you're kind of going to have to do anyway if you want to participate in these events. But so here it is, the infamous Bandai TCG Plus app. You're going to want to download that. You go to start. This is where you can find a bunch of different events around you. You could go event search, store events tab. And this one is really nice because you can go event detail search. You can check, your location. Let's just say Los Angeles, right? Los Angeles. And then you can go distance from current location. And then it'll show you stores in the area. And this is how I find a lot of the stores, because there will be a lot of card game stores, but they're not all guaranteed to have One Piece communities. So this will show you like when upcoming events are in your area. And a lot of these are just local events where it's like $5 entry and you get a pack and a special tournament pack that they give away just at these little tournaments. So I would check that out in the app. And then you can there's a decks tab where you can upload your deck. You only really have to worry about this if you're going to a bigger tournament. That way they know like what deck lists you're running and stuff like that. And you'll have to open this during the events. Like you'll have to open this during events. Sometimes they scan your barcode in here. And then you also track your results as you go. So if you lose, you track it in this app. It'll show you like who you're going to be playing next at what table. All that stuff is tracked in this app. It is, by the way, a very bad app. It has like 2-star reviews, but it gets the job done well enough. And it's just a necessary evil for now. So you got to download it, bring it with you, etc. And I highly recommend prepping that before you start looking at your locals. And it's a good way to actually go to locals and find the ones that are around you. By the way, locals are just local events. If you refer to them as tournaments, even though they are technically tournaments, people would be like, what? You're going to a tournament like this early? It's not really a tournament. People call them locals because it's like a local event. The winnings are typically pretty humble. You might get a couple tournament packs. There are some case events where they give away the contents of an entire case of booster boxes. So if you win, you can get like 2 booster boxes or something, but entry for those is typically higher. If the prizing is higher, the stakes are typically higher. There's usually more entrants. The people are typically more sweaty. So just expect that, know that, understand that. Okay, so you got your deck, you got your locals, you got your Bandai app. Next, I would suggest that you learn how to shuffle. Okay, now this is going to sound easy, it's going to sound simple, and in many ways it is, but if you're not used to this, you might be screwed, okay? Because it'll take you forever to shuffle, you won't shuffle well, and that'll be bad for you. Let's just say that. Not shuffling well just leads to pure pain, period. Like, you don't want to be drawing big bundles of stuff. You want a good dispersion and randomization of your cards. So the best way to do this is called mash shuffling. There are tutorials for this online. It is very hard to do if you have double sleeved your cards. That is, if you had put 2 sleeves on your cards. So if you want easier mash shuffling, maybe consider just single sleeving your cards. I still double sleeve mine. I'll just kind of sit in front of the TV and do some mash shuffling. This is how it looks, by the way. The keys to this, in my opinion, keep the cards loose as possible. I have a lot of improvement area. I have a lot of room for improvement. But yeah, keep the cards as loose as you can. Make sure that when you're shuffling, you kind of put the cards in different spots. And you only need to do this about like 4, 5, 6 times, and you got a very good randomization of your cards. So learn to do that before you go to your locals, preferably. Don't do the pile shuffling alone, because that's not good enough shuffling. And yeah, and then you can just add this at the end if you want to do like a little bit extra. Stuff that you should bring. I would recommend, and this is just something that I've kind of discovered recently, is bringing an extra little deck box. Just some receptacle to put extra cards in. This is the deck box that I use for my deck. So I would bring in another deck box on top of that, because when you go and you enter these locals, they'll give you a couple cards, maybe you'll win some cards. And for those, you want to be able to put the bulk cards in something like this, or you might want to bring some top loaders. That is the little cases that you can put the cards into. I don't have one with me at the moment, but yeah, just bring stuff to put cards into so that you're not like carrying around loose cards, or you don't have to just stuff them in your deck box. That can be done in a pinch, but I like to have somewhere else to put those extra cards with me. Bring a binder if you want to trade cards, but maybe not if you don't want to be hauling around too much stuff. There's you can kind of go light, which is just your deck and just your playmat. Or you can go a little bit heavier, which is what I do. I bring a backpack with my binder so that I could put like nicer cards in there if I pull, alt arts or secret rares, etc., which I have done before at these tournaments, locals. Okay, so other things that you need to know. My deck is in these clear sleeves. I like the way that they look. These are Dragon Shield clear matte dual sleeves. I like these sleeves, but you need to have different sleeves for your Dawn and for your leader. This is like an official tournament thing. They're not going to care at local events, but if you go to an official one, they got to be different. So I would just get different sleeves to start with, just so people are prepared. This is what my sleeves look like. They're the art sleeves, the OPTCG art sleeves for my Dawn. And then for your leader, you should have another color sleeve. I just have it in this. So basically you got to be able to differentiate between like what's your leader and what's your deck and what's your Dawn. So mine I have in this kind of magnetic snap case. There's other snap cases that are better. It's like more compact, but I have it in this. I need to get one of those smaller ones because this is a little bit too bulky to have. But yeah, I like to do this. It's nice to have your leader in something like this, even if it's like a crappy, common leader, not alt art, because it adds to the game feel, in my opinion, which is kind of a funny thing to talk about with this game, but it feels more like a leader, which helps, the way that you think about the game in your head and you visualize it actually makes a big difference in your ability to read the game state at any given time, in my opinion. The other stuff that you should bring, you should probably bring some dice. I mentioned this in the previous video, but you want to bring some dice. Not only are you going to use this at the beginning of the game to decide who goes first, but you can also use these dice as a way of tracking what is, kind of the status of your characters. This deck doesn't really care about that, but some decks, they work by subtracting from the cost of your enemy's cards. So let's say that your enemy has a 5 cost card on the board, right? And I have a card that makes it cost 2 less, so it goes down to 3. So I would say, okay, like this card actually has now a cost of 3. So that just helps you to track the state of different cards. You don't need that, but it helps for the readability and helps you keep track of what's happening on your turns so that you don't actually accidentally make a slip up and cheat or get disqualified or something like that. Okay, so let's get into the act of actually playing the game. Once you sit down at the table and you start playing a game, you're going to have 30 minutes to 45 minutes on the clock. It depends on the store, it depends on the rules, it depends on, all that stuff. So make sure you check that out first. But it's best of 1 round. So you're not, some other games that are shorter, you'll play 3 games and it's best of 3, and whoever wins that, you move on to the next step. But this is just best of 1. You finish your game and then whoever wins moves on. If the game goes to overtime, okay, you get 5 minutes of extra time. You play an additional 3 turns, with the current active player's turn becoming turn 0. If the game is not finished after those additional turns, the following procedures are used to determine the winner. The player with the highest number of life cards wins. And then if there's a tie there, the player with the higher number of cards remaining in their deck wins. If there's a tie there, the player with more characters in the character area wins. And if there's a tie there, the player who last drew from their life area wins. Those are all just things that you should know, because I have seen games go overtime and people didn't know the rules and it ended badly, and yeah, it's just sad. So here's how you would prepare for a game. First, you shuffle. While you're shuffling, you're kind of chatting with the other player. Get to know the other person you're playing with, right? Like, I like to ask, how'd you do in your last match? What are you playing? How do you find that deck's doing? Like, any issues that you've run into? Obviously, you're not trying to like extract strategy out of this or like try to swindle them out of giving some info about their deck, but just from friendly questions, ask them, how long have you been playing, whatever. This is a good chance to get to know the people in the community. Everyone's really cool. Most people are really cool. Some people will just like not really want to talk, but most of the people are pretty chill, and there's some really sociable folks, despite this being a card game. But yeah, so then after you shuffle your cards, you'll put your deck down, the other person will put their deck down, you cut their deck like this, and then they'll cut your deck. That way it's just fair. You've each, make sure there's no funny business going on. But then you roll to see who goes first. And for that, whoever has dice, you'll say, okay, high or low. You'll ask the other player, high or low. The other player will say high, or they'll say low. If they say high, we both roll the dice, and whoever rolls higher determines who goes first. They make the call on who gets to go first. If the other person says low, then whoever rolls lower will determine who goes first. So if, let's say I say, okay, high or low. The other player says high. Okay, I roll the dice, I roll 6. The other player rolls a dice, they roll 9. So we chose high. The other player rolled 9, which is higher than 6. So that player gets to go first. Or they get to choose who goes first. I'm sorry. Choosing who goes first in this game is kind of complicated, but it depends on the deck. Make sure that you figure out when you want to go first and which matchups, etc., etc. Katakuri typically wants to go second against Moria. He wants to go first. For those who are interested in playing Katakuri, he's not very good anymore, but anyway, yeah, that's how that works. So once you've done that, you've determined who goes first, you've shuffled your cards, you've cut each other's cards. You draw your first hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You go, okay. You look at your hand. Do I want this hand? Let's say I don't want if you decide to keep it, you say, okay, I keep. You keep your hand, and then you shuffle out your 5 life cards onto your life area. Say you don't want that hand, you'd say I mulligan. Sorry, let's clear the space out. You say I mulligan. You give your deck a good couple shuffles. I also have very shaky hands, which is very embarrassing because I get a little bit nervous and my hands are already shaky. So then when I'm in the context of local events, my hands are like, I'm freaking out. It doesn't have to be too, a lot of people will just do like a quick this thing or something and then like maybe one mash shuffle or something. But yeah, you do a quick shuffle. Then you draw your top 5 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that is your hand. You're stuck with that, okay? Then you shuffle out your 5 life. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that you start. You say, good luck, man. Fist bump. People tend to fist bump like at the beginning and end of the game, just as a show of sportsmanship. If not, you can just say, good luck, nod, and just go. Okay. And now we are playing some One Piece, baby. Okay, so this is your basic setup. This is how the game works. You can lay out, when it comes to the field, you can kind of lay out your cards however. It doesn't have to be super strict. Just know that like you got your Dawn area at the bottom where you'll put your Dawn. In the middle somewhere you have your leader and your stages that you'll put. And then at the top you have where you put your characters. The leader is kind of flexible. Like I've seen people put them like wherever that they want. As long as there's somewhere in this area, you're pretty much good. I've seen some people, I feel like some people have put their leaders at the top or something. And then your trash here, your deck here. I like to put it a little bit of an offset because it's easier for me to draw like this. I also put my Dawn upside down. I don't know if that's like tournament legal, but it just makes it easier. So when I flip the cards like this, it's easier for me. I don't know. That's how I like to do it. But yeah, just also when you deal out your life, like I like to have the top card here. So I'm like looking at my cards here, etc. Okay, so let's say I chose to go second, my opponent goes. Usually you don't do anything on the first turn, but okay, so first draw, bring out 2 Dawn, make a play. Okay, I don't have anything that I feel like playing on this turn, so I'll say pass to you. Other player goes. Let's say they do something, and then let's say they attack my leader for 8. I'll say, okay, I don't feel like countering that, so I will take that. You take a look at your life card, typically like this. Don't pull it straight into your hand. Look at it like this because you want to see if it has a trigger, okay? If you don't want to use the trigger, you could say no trigger and pull it into your hand. If it does have a trigger, say trigger, and then you activate the trigger, okay? And then when you activate your trigger, of course, the card goes into your trash and you put it in your trash. Okay, so let's say from there they pass it to me. Then I would restand everything, draw another card, take 2 more Dawn, and then I will attack. This is how this deck typically works. So when I'm attacking and I want to attach a Dawn, I will put the Dawn kind of next to the card and then put the leader card rested. And then I'll say I'll attack your leader with my leader. And then the way that this guy works is that when I attack with an attached Dawn, he gets plus 1k power. So he becomes 7k attacker. And I can look at the top card of my life cards and then either put it at the top or bottom. I'll keep it at the top. I could also do that with my opponent's cards if I so chose. Anyway, so I would attack. Let's say the attack goes through, they take a damage, there's no trigger. Then I have 3 Dawn, and then I'll say, okay, well, for 3, I'll pay 3. You rest your Dawn to show that you've used them, and then you put out your character. I play Charlotte Prospero and passed to you. So you want to make sure that you're kind of communicating what's happening. The most important things that you communicate are like what you were attacking with what, how much power it has, etc. You don't have to communicate like what a card does when you play it. You can just assume that the other player knows it. But you can also, if you don't know what your opponent's card does, ask. You should take the initiative to ask what your opponent's cards do if you don't already know what they do. So you can say, do you mind if I take a look at that card? And then they'll look at it, okay? And then read the card, blah, blah, blah. They know what happens. You can give it to them, and then you can also describe what it does as they look at it. You can say, oh, when it on KO, it searches the top 3 cards for a Big Mom Pirate. And then, you know, it'll make it faster for them. They can like kind of skim it and see what's happening. Okay, so let's say that all that stuff happened. They take their turn. They pass it back to me. Okay, so this is your upkeep stage where you bring everything back to active. Don't be afraid to put your hand down, okay? Like, you can put your hand down. I like to do that. That way I can use 2 hands for my upkeep stage and refreshing everything. And then pull up this card. Bring out your 2 Dawn. I like to also say 1, 2, I have 6 Dawn. I like to like kind of announce what turn it is just for myself. And just to kind of understand what is happening in the game state. So let's say, okay, I'll go 1 Dawn. Play Charlotte Pudding. Charlotte Pudding is a 1-cost searcher, which allows me to search my deck for a Big Mom Pirate. Search top 4 cards of my deck for a Big Mom Pirate. Okay, so this is actually very good to know. Okay, so I'll draw 4 cards. She lets you draw, a Big Mom type card or a Sanji that is not also Charlotte Pudding. She can't draw herself. So, okay, I'll look at the top 4 cards of my deck, and I can only draw one of these cards. So it says reveal that card. So you have to reveal it. You can do this and just say, okay, I'm going to draw this, and then take that into your hand. But what I like to do, okay, is I like to just put whatever card that I'm revealing, I just put it down on the table. I'm going to have to put these cards on the bottom of my deck in whatever order I want anyway. You don't have to worry about this too much unless your deck, you know that you're going to go through your entire deck. Then you bottom deck it, put your deck down, and then that way it's revealed this whole time. The opponent can look at it. You don't have to be like a quick flash of it or whatever. And then you can pull that back into your hand. That's kind of the best way of revealing a card, in my opinion. So then I'll, again, rest this card, swing at leader for 5. They don't take, they counter. I'll swing at leader with Prospero for 5. They counter out, and then I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Dawn. And then I'll play Soul Pocus, which the opponent has to either trash a card or give me a life. Okay, they get to choose. But yeah, let's say they give me a life. Okay, they give me a life. I put my life back like that, and then we're good to go. So this is the basic flow of the game. When you're looking at your hand, some people like to do this like thing called a hand shuffle where they'll like do this. I'm so bad at this, dude. It's pretty hard with these like kind of glossy sleeves. I don't do any of this fancy stuff. This is like a Yu-Gi-Oh thing apparently, but I just like hold my cards like a normal human being. I like to see them all at the same time and then kind of do this. You can put them on the table if you want. And try not to like put them under the table or anything, because that can be a little sketchy. Other things to know: you can ask what your opponent has in their hand. You can ask questions about like how a card works, the rules. Don't worry about it. People are very helpful. Obviously, unless it's about their strategy and what they're trying to do, they don't have to tell you that. But if it comes to down to what does this card do? What is its effect? They gotta tell you that, or at the very least let you read the card. So make sure that you're communicating, especially in situations where you haven't seen a deck before, which will be very common for someone when you are starting out. So let's say we gotten all the way to end game. I attack for 17k or whatever at your leader, and then they'll typically say, you got it. They reach out their fist, you give them a quick fist bump, you could reveal what was in your hand, and then just talk about the game. And then you wait until the rest of the time expires. You can kind of pack up your cards. Most of the shuffling you want to do like before the game, so your opponent can see how well you're shuffling and stuff like that. Yeah, you can talk about what happened, start prepping for the next game, and then from there you can go spectate. You can go around to the other tables and see what's happening, talk to other players who are also spectating the last games that are wrapping up, and just really intermingle with the community, get to know the people around you a little bit more. And then also after the game, you'll want to go into the Bandai app and track who won. It's very confusing. I usually let the opponent do it, or I figure out how it works and then I do it myself. These are the basics of how you would participate in your local. I hope that this was some helpful insight for those who don't know that much about the game, who are looking to get into it. But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm, again, still just getting started. But yeah, I hope you have the best of luck in your first events. Don't be too concerned about winning or losing. Just try to make friends, learn how the game works, get used to playing over the board and, in physical format, because it's a lot different than playing online. Practice your shuffles. Don't try not to make mistakes, because you will probably do that at first. I made a lot of mistakes because it's a lot harder to monitor stuff that is not being kept track of instantaneously in the form of an app in the simulator. Digital card games will do all that stuff for you, but you have to monitor this stuff in person if you don't want to accidentally give yourself a disadvantage because you did something wrong or because you forgot something about how your character works. Playing in person will help you to prevent this and to be a more consistent player overall, because a lot of times these decks have the little details, these little upkeep things that'll really screw you over if you don't take them into consideration first. So make sure that you do that. Make sure that you understand how these cards work, because you don't have a computer that's going to say, oh, that won't go through if you try to do this. At one of my first events, one of my first locals that I went to, I pulled Onami off of the top of my life cards, right? And Onami says KO a character with 5 cost or less. That's the trigger effect. So she triggered and I said, okay, trigger, I'm going to use this on that character. But I didn't realize that they had just that turn played a Sabo, which makes it so that none of the characters can get killed on board on the turn it's played. So I couldn't kill anything, and it negated this, and it didn't work. Luckily, my opponent let me draw the card into my hand because I was a beginner, and I revealed the card anyway, so it is kind of fair, but I think like in a real game, you'd probably have to just trash it or something. I don't know. I don't really know how that works if you make a mistake. But I made a mistake, screwed up. I gave myself a disadvantage because the opponent knew what was in my hand. And yeah, you don't want to do that very much. You want to learn how these cards work. Because yeah, in the sim, it wouldn't even have let me try to KO something on the board. It would have said no trigger because no triggers were available on the board. But because I thought it was available, I called trigger when I didn't actually have one, and it screwed me over. And there are a lot bigger ways that you can screw yourself over in this game, and just insta lose yourself a game. One of the big ones is if you don't realize that something is a blocker, make sure you look at your opponent's cards and see if something is a blocker. Look for that orange text so that you know that you might get chump blocked by something, okay? I don't want to see people swinging for 10k at something and it gets chump blocked by a 1k because they didn't realize that they had a chump blocker on board. So just know these things, get familiar with it, and you will very quickly excel at the game of One Piece. or at least hopefully you get to around, something higher than 50% win rate, which is really the best you can ask for in a card game. But yeah, check out these sleeves, by the way. But man, some people, the way that they handle their cards, they're pros, dude. They're like, they'll do this and then each card is perfectly spaced out from one another. I'm like, damn, how do you do that? Mine is always so messy. But there's something about playing with a card that, like, with cards that you just feel, aesthetically fit your style. There's an expression to card gaming that I'm really, really enjoying. So just know that, like, this game is about the feel, it's about the swag, it's about you're playing with these items that you purchased. It's a game about, it's a materialistic game. So just accept that and really enjoy that fact. Yeah, I just hope you all have fun and that you're able to do well in these local environments, because this is a really fun game and I want more people to be able to experience it. Make sure, if you like the video, like and subscribe and follow for more. I will be posting soon some gameplay videos as I learn new decks and try to prepare for upcoming metagames, etc. So thanks for watching, and I'll see ya in the next one.